Hello, today we're talking about Ennedi Massif. It is a UNESCO Heritage Site in Chad. So every UNESCO Heritage Site has a webpage. So we're going to start learning about this site by just taking a look at that. So we're going to do that by asking the question, what is Ennedi Massif? So here's that website. It's got a description, picture, and usually an evaluation of universal value. I say usually because Ennedi Massif, as well as multiple other sites across the world, lack this description. Nevertheless, the site listing still provides some key information, and so some of that is highlighted here in orange. So Ennedi Massif is considered a natural and cultural site, which means that it has ecological and historical significance. This lecture will focus primarily on the cultural aspects through an analysis of the cave paintings. You see that I've highlighted here at the bottom of the paragraph that Ennedi Massif is one of the largest ensembles of rock art in the Sahara. And so historical geography is necessary to understand this landscape and its significance. So I highlighted the location in Chad because it is key to understanding a place. Where something is explains a lot about the history and the physical characteristics of that place. And so with Ennedi Massif being located in Chad, we know that it's in the center of northern Africa and therefore largely consumed by the Sahara Desert. So as stated, this site is notable for being a large ensemble of rock art. And these cave paintings are really unique because of what they depict. So some basic facts about Ennedi Massif. We mentioned it's a cultural heritage site. It's a collection of rock features shaped through wind and water erosion, and some of these are decorated with some really interesting rock art. As the name suggests, the region is a massif, but honestly, that's kind of a weird word. So according to dictionary.com, a massif is a geologically distinct mass of rock, or a series of connected masses. So aside from physical geography, it basically means that Ennedi Massif has lots of, it looks sort of like rock towers, and many of these are decorated with those paintings. So aside from the physical geography, Ennedi Massif is a place filled with cave paintings. There's evidence of past peoples, in all of history. Evidence of past peoples, whether through written records, archaeology, or in this case, art, reveals what life was once like. And in Chad, the modern reality differs greatly from the artistic representation. So this is a desert. Specifically, this is the Sahara in Chad in the modern day. This picture was taken by researchers studying Ennedi Massif to explore its cultural and natural value. So aside from seeing a couple more green plants than we'd probably expect, this looks like a pretty stereotypical desert. You see sand, you see more rocky looking sand in the background, and then you see a little bit of raised land in the far background. So it's dry, it's sandy, there's going to be a lot of dust here. This is sort of what you think of when you think desert. This is a snapshot of the cave paintings at Ennedi Massif. I don't know about you, but I didn't expect to see cows in a desert. This is a normal picture I would expect for maybe a grassland or prairie ecosystem, but Ennedi Massif is in a desert, as we just saw. So why are these pictures here? What has changed between these paintings and now? So, this video clip from the documentary Sahara's Secret Garden is going to provide a closer look at the rock art. They'll do a video representation of it, and then also the narrator will speak about sort of what it contains.
Years ago, the men of the Ennedi left a great number of red and white paintings on the rocks. Abderrahim discovers these images bearing witness to the life of his distant ancestors. At that time, instead of camels, they had large herds of cows, animals which would find it hard to survive here today. They lived in large huts and filled their attics with millet, which today exists only further south. Then, little by little, the rains diminished, the rivers dried up, the trees died, and only desert remained. The cows died off, and the camel appeared.
All right. My apologies for the late narration on there. Technology is only so good sometimes. So as we saw in the video, the cave paintings are of cows, they're of grains that don't even exist in the region. And so the modern geography of Africa and the animals depicted at Ennedi Massif reveals that environmental change has occurred over time. As a result, the culture and the way of life for people in this region has also shifted. This picture here shows animals that look a lot more like horses than cows, which shows change over time. Because as climate change occurred in this area, cows could not be as easily supported, and so horses were necessary for further travel. And then the video mentioned camels, which are what are a lot more common in deserts today. So our next big question, now that we've talked about what Ennedi Massif is, we're going to talk about why are there pictures of grassland creatures in a desert. So here's the picture we saw just a couple moments ago to contrast the animals depicted in paintings with modern reality. The image also represents the legacy of desertification, which has transformed the Sahara. Desertification is a big word that ultimately means becoming a desert. It's caused by soil erosion, and this process is a positive feedback loop because more erosion leads to more desertification and thus expanding sand. Climate change results in less rain, and the lack of water doesn't allow for agriculture, so pastoralism is adopted. Then, overgrazing removes the plants necessary to keep the soil in place, and the hotter, drier climate means that sand easily blows away. Only a rocky gravel substance called desert pavement remains, and plants are unable to push through this in order to produce adequate roots. Therefore, the region becomes desert and expands as this process continues. So, Ennedi Massif reveals a legacy of change, of past being different from the present. However, within this change is a continuity. The climate shifts over time. But how did such a dramatic change occur? The short answer is that planetary changes in the Earth's rotations and tilt led to slightly more sunlight, which made the northern hemisphere warmer. Wind moved towards this open air and brought the rains needed to make the Sahara green. Opposite shifts resulted in the end of this period and the desertification that we see today. This video here from PBS Eons provides more in-depth description and some really neat animation to help explain that. So if you're interested, it's an 8-minute video, definitely check it out. So this is a picture of Lake Megachad. The blue, hopefully you can see my mouse. The blue, as you see here in this region, is what's called Lake Megachad. So Chad itself is a particularly interesting region in the discussion of Saharan expansion because of this giant body of water. Today, it's significantly smaller. Sadly, no lakes in the modern world have the prefix mega, although Lake Mega Superior sounds kind of awesome. Lake Megachad is also pretty cool because it speaks to the legacy of climate change in Africa. During what's known as the African Humid Period, Lake Megachad was 340,000 square kilometers large. This is bigger than all of the Great Lakes combined. Evidence of this historic shoreline is found in the rocks as sediment marks the previous water levels. Moreover, all of the rock paintings at Ennedi Massif and other sites across Africa where rock art was also discovered are all above this proposed shoreline. So, larger water sources directly result, larger water sources like these directly result from the African Humid Period, which is also known as the Green Sahara. These facilitated human life more similar to the savannas than a desert. So, the rock art in Ennedi Massif illustrates this humid period, but it also demonstrates its decline. So featured animals gradually shifted from cows to horses to camels, suggesting receding water sources and a need to adapt. The environmental differences caused by these geological changes forced both animals and humans to adapt. Modern nomadic groups remain relatively isolated and have adapted in direct response to their environment, but also in response to physical separation from other groups. An interesting case study in Ennedi Massif is a small population of little crocodiles living in an oasis area. I say little because they're feet smaller than the Western Nile crocodiles that they share heritage with. This protected population adapted to their environment and developed differently from their ancestors, just as the people of Ennedi Massif have developed in response to their physical surroundings, but still carry traces of their earlier history. So the quote that you see here on the screen is from a writer named Jean Thillot. I am not positive I'm pronouncing that right. But he produced a first-hand account of his explorations through Ennedi Massif and its surrounding areas between 1912 and 1917. So his diary entries were published in a peer-reviewed journal, adequately named the Geographical Journal. And so his writings reveal differences between the Sahara then, 100 years ago, and now. So evidence of desertification this is evidence that desertification is a continuing process. So Jean states that in all the valleys, splendid grazing land is found, where not only camels but also thousands of oxen could live if the problem of drinking water troughs did not present itself every year in the height of the dry season. As he continues on, he refers to land in Ennedi Massif as excellent pasture, which reveals that grazable land was more readily available even just 100 years ago. And so that process of desertification has been continuing in the postmodern era as well. Although Ennedi Massif is no longer the grassland that it once was, there are oases in this region. He mentions the presence of water for a couple times throughout the year. And also we saw a few green plants in the previous desert picture. These are all reminders of the savanna legacy in the Sahara. So the final question we're going to explore is what is the value and significance of Ennedi Massif as a UNESCO World Heritage Site? So, to review, we've discussed what Ennedi Massif is and why cows were painted in place with sand. Next, we're going to evaluate this location as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. But what does it mean for a place to be a World Heritage Site? So the UNESCO vision states that this program is intended to encourage the identification, protection, and preservation of cultural and natural heritage around the world considered to be of outstanding value to humanity. So the idea of preserving human legacy sounds noble and good. However, this vision statement merits analysis, and the best way to examine something is to question it. So who owns these sites? Is Ennedi Massif controlled by Chad, UNESCO, the people of that state or organization, or, to be as vague as possible, humanity? If protection and preservation is the goal, then what happens when a site isn't meeting these standards? What are the standards? Ultimately, the claims of World Heritage are problematic because they conflict with sovereignty. Sovereignty is the supreme authority and control of a territory and its people. This authority is interrupted when an international organization claims control over a significant section of land, culture, geography, and people. Political and economic questions arise in response to the UNESCO World Heritage Program. Who controls the site and who benefits from it? To examine how Ennedi Massif is impacted by its status as a World Heritage Site, we must explore tourism and non-governmental organization perspectives. So here are some of those perspectives. Each of these places are websites that offer either research, tourism, or information on conservation as related to Ennedi Massif. So looking at the first one, Explore Chad, researcher Stefan Kroplin from the University of Cologne in Germany is one of the primary researchers on the Explore Chad team, and he states that Ennedi Massif is of significant importance to scientific research. The sandstone plateau holds information about the climatic, environmental, and cultural developments of the largest desert on our planet over the last 11,000 years. A group trip through Ennedi Massif, as advertised by GeoX, is entitled A Celebration of Sandstone, and focuses on tours through the natural landscapes as well as, quote, interactions with Saharan desert nomads, end quote. The explanation of this trip refers to the rock art as sensational, and an open air gallery of prehistoric representations. So these two legacies bring up some interesting questions. Is Ennedi Massif valuable only because of its legacy? To what extent is the modern characteristics of this region? What impact do those have on the global perspective? So, from the tourism point of view, Ennedi Massif is attractive because of its scientific, but also natural beauty. Moving on to African parks, It's a non-governmental organization which relies on funding from its partners, such as National Geographic, the European Union, the government of Benin, and many others. So this is to preserve natural and cultural sites in Africa. Since February 2018, Ennedi Massif has been under regulation of this organization in partnership with the government of Chad. Their website states that prior to management, the landscape had undergone excessive poaching and unsustainable resource extraction. According to international organizations, Ennedi Massif needs to be set aside. However, is it right for global powers to make those decisions, or should sovereign states and people be in control? In an increasingly globalized world, there may not be a correct answer. Connectivity is beneficial in many ways, but we must recognize that it is nearly impossible to reverse. That connectivity is nearly impossible to reverse. Negative effects such as conflicts over sovereignty are going to accompany this reality of increasing connectiveness and globalization. So, the presence of global involvement in Ennedi Massif helps answer some of our original questions about the UNESCO vision statement. The sovereignty of Ennedi Massif does not belong exclusively to the people or state, at least in modern reality. The nomads are considered highlights on a tourism trip, and outside organizations have taken away economic profits from the local people in the name of preservation. We must recognize this as a problem and understand that the legacies of imperialism painted throughout world history still continue today in different neo-colonial forms. One of those is this aspect of preservation. So overall, Ennedi Massif is globally significant. Although issues accompany global claims to heritage, this UNESCO Heritage Site is distinct for illustrating climate change in the Sahara, adaptation over time, and the international hand affecting the natural and cultural aspects of Africa. So, thank you for listening to this presentation, and I look forward to hearing your feedback.